Now we are going to talk about it. Joining us now live is the journalist Javed Rana to discuss the delay of the Gaza ceasefire. Javed, thank you so much for joining us here on A News. It's been an interesting couple of hours. First, we have received the delay because Israel has claimed that they have not yet received the list of the abductees, the hostages who were going to be released. Then they continued the attack. And afterwards, we have seen, in the last hour, we have seen that it is unfolding that the negotiators, the mediators, has the list of the names. And we are now waiting for the ceasefire to happen, but it didn't happen yet. But we have the resignations from the Israeli cabinets, which is indicating that the ceasefire is going to happen. So, around with the light of all of these, what would you say?
Well, I think Israel has received at least the 3 names of the captives. I call them prisoners of war under the custody of Hamas and other jihadi group. Now, in a broader picture, I would say that there are genuine reasons because of which Hamas and other jihadi groups have not been able to basically come up with the names of all the captives. Reason being is that the Hamas and the other jihadi groups have been using traditional means for the communication. A reason being is that Israel has complete hold over the communication system in Gaza. They've been basically spying on all the communication taking place in Gaza. So because of those reasons, the traditional means, I would call it some kind of ancient means they are using to communicate with each other, given the fact that the biggest threat to these prisoners of war is from Israel itself, because under its own war doctrine, they prefer to kill these prisoners of war because they believe that they will put them in a very vulnerable position on the whenever there is any bargain at the end of the war.
Javed,
that has been their war.
I should cut in because there is a new breaking news that is coming to me and I would like to discuss it with you. So the prime ministers of the prime minister's office has made a declaration that they indeed received the names of the prisoners, the war prisoners, as you mentioned them. Then they also said that they are now giving information to the families of those people, the prisoners. So this is the statement that has come from the Israeli Prime Minister's office. And we have heard it from the negotiator's office before, but it is important that the Israeli Prime Minister's office also underlined that they have received the names. So what would you say? Do we expect the ceasefire to start anytime soon?
Well, at this particular point of time, there are as many as 3 names that we have heard so far. Now, it really depends on the strategy of the apartheid state, what kind of strategy it has been pursuing. Will it accept it, at least to begin with, because Hamas has been struggling hard to communicate. They've been trying to know about the whereabouts of these prisoners of the war, and somehow or the other, they must be there in the tunnels, and communicating with them is, again, something easier said than done. Given the fact that there has to be a spirit of the ceasefire, at least Israel should have waited for a week time to receive the names, though Hamas has come up with a promise that they would release the name of the prisoners of war as soon as possible. But the fact that Israel is so much used to killing people for no rhyme and reason, they opted to kill at least 10 people from this morning till now. There was no point of continuing with this genocidal war when there was an announcement of the ceasefire, and particularly today, there was not at all any reason because of which Israel could have continued with this genocidal war, but they have opted basically to continue with their killing machine, this genocidal war. 10 people's lives have been lost. Now, in a broader picture, the question that you have raised, that the very spirit of your question is basically, will this ceasefire would survive? Because if there are ill intention to disrupt the ceasefire, then obviously I think these kind of episodes are likely to happen. Israel can come up with any justification, any lame justification, saying that the Hamas is not pursuing the contents of the ceasefire, and they will resume these bombings. So that those apprehensions are there, that Israel in one way or the other will indulge into this exercise. But in a broader picture, when there is a lot of pressure from the President-elect Donald Trump on Prime Minister Netanyahu, it is not that easy for Netanyahu to continue with this genocidal war. It has to be concluded. It cannot be unending. Though Netanyahu wants to continue it, partly because there is already troubles in Israel. Their allies have resigned. And I don't think that the sooner his government would collapse. I don't think this is going to happen, because the opposition parties have promised that they would give him some kind of support. But obviously, it is quite clear that the days of Netanyahu's government are going to be numbered. There is going to be a bigger investigation inside Israel, where he is going to be held accountable, to begin with, as to why October 7th Hamas military operation was so successful, why they were caught unaware. That is the domestic side of the picture. Let's come back to the Gaza, because we have seen the resilience of the people in Gaza. They have preferred to die. They have preferred to lay down their lives. They have preferred to become shelterless. They have preferred to lose all their children. They have preferred to lose their generations. It is not one generation. It is not two generations. At least 3 generations have been lost, not by one family, by hundreds of the families in Gaza. That is something extraordinary. This kind of resilience I cannot recall which might have happened anywhere in the world. This is an extraordinary situation where
Javed,
literally...
Yet again, I'm cutting in to share another breaking news. Now, the Prime Minister's office of Israel has made another statement that in 5 minutes, the ceasefire is going to start. When it is 12:15 in their local time, the ceasefire is about to start. Now you can continue.
Yes, it's a good beginning. At least the people in Gaza will take a sigh of relief, because you will see, I think, within the next couple of hours, people would be certainly on the roads. There would be jubilation, despite the fact that people in Gaza have not been able to even to grieve themselves, because Israel essentially has turned out to be a killing machine. They've been killing children. They've been destroying all kind of infrastructure in Gaza. But I think with the implementation of the ceasefire in Gaza, at least there will be supply line would be restored in Gaza after about 1.5 year. About the food supplies, about the medicine supplies, they are badly needed at this particular point of time. What is the needed most in Gaza is about the restoration of the supply line of the foods and the medicine. I think that is going to happen. That is a very healthy sign. But again, coming back to the other side of the picture, that who has lost and who has won? Apparently, Israel has won in terms of killing as many Palestinians as many it could have killed, as many it desired to kill. Through an artificial intelligence, they were killing people one after the other. Even if they knew it, where these youngsters are who could be potentially member of Hamas, they may not be necessarily member of Hamas. They continue to kill them by locating their location, but they did not opt to kill them when they were in the streets, when they were in the bazaars. They opted to kill them when they reached home, because with that, Israel was managing to kill entire family, the generations. Because this is no longer a secret. Everybody knows it, that Israel's intent was basically to create conditions with a genocidal war where people exit from Gaza. That has not happened. Partly, Egypt did not allow Palestinians to come into the Sinai Peninsula, Sinai region, Sinai Desert. That did not happen. But the bigger reason is that it has been the resilience on the part of the Palestinians. They prefer to die. Now, at least I think, if not 1/3, at least 1/4 among the among the deads are the children. And there are 46,000 people who have been killed. And if we look at the bigger picture inside Gaza, going by under the debris, there are at least 11 to 25,000 people who are under the rubbles. They are under the debris. Now, whenever their dead bodies are going to be taken out, I think these casualty figures will go up. And officially, we know it is more than 110,000 people who are either have been maimed or injured. Now, with that means that at least 3 to 4% population of 2.4 million people in Gaza, they have been either eliminated or they have been disabled. They are not able to continue with their normal cycle of life. That is the biggest loss. But point is, Netanyahu had made it public time and again. He has vowed that he is going to eliminate Hamas altogether. Everybody was telling him from the West and elsewhere in the world, you cannot eliminate Hamas, it is an ideology. But he did not listen to. Now he has ended up negotiating with the Hamas, which means that legally speaking, it has conceded to the legitimacy of Hamas. Number one. Number two, going by what outgoing US Secretary of State Blinken said, that Hamas recruited as many people as many it lost in the genocidal war against Israel, which means that the strength of Hamas, by and large, is intact. Strength in terms of its workforce, in terms of its militants, its soldiers, that is intact. Yes, they have lost the infrastructure. They have lost the commercial infrastructure. Yes, they have lost the parts of the tunnels which Israel managed to destroy. And 70 to 80, probably it is around 90% infrastructure has been destroyed. That is the bigger challenge. And who's going to build up that infrastructure? This is a bigger question because help is going to come mostly from the Muslim countries, more particularly from Turkey, from Qatar, from other Arab countries. This should be compensated by the apartheid state. And I think sooner or later, at least international courts are going to come up with a judgment where Israel would be forced to compensate the destruction that it has undertaken over the period of 1.5 years. So in a broader picture, let's see how things unfold. But given the fact that the way Israel has operated today, the way we have seen the very fate of the ceasefire, that does suggest that there could possibly be similar situation in days to come.
Well, as you mentioned, what is going to happen to the infrastructure is quite important. But what would you say about the decision to delay the ceasefire? And now the ceasefire is going to take place. Has started actually. In 1 minute ago, the ceasefire has started. And so the captive list is there and everything. But don't you think that it has started in a shaky grounds? Because it was going to start at the 8:30 a.m. in their local time. And it has been delayed for a couple hours, 4 hours in particular, 2 hours and 45 minutes, if we are to be exact. So what would you say about the ceasefire? Do you think that it is going to continue?
Well, it was very chilly start, very shaky start, and the very spirit of the ceasefire has been breached by apartheid state with the killing of as many as 10 Palestinians right on the day when the ceasefire was bound to be enforced. That did not happen. Now, the bigger question is why Israel has opted it. Because it has been resorting to violence, which has been its traditional means of pressurizing the opponent party, and exactly the same thing happened. Now, as I explained earlier on, that the Hamas cannot use the latest modern communication gadgets to communicate with this rank and files. Now, these prisoners of war have been camouflaged, have been hidden, probably in the tunnels. They have been separated from each other. It's not that all of the prisoners of the war are located at one particular location. They have been separated from each other. They have been divided so that if some of them are killed, at least others are saved, because these prisoners of war have been the only tool of Hamas with which they could have negotiated, and they have successfully managed to negotiate with the ceasefire on the basis of the only tool that was these prisoners of the war. Otherwise, I think what is there now left over in Gaza, that is about 10 to 20% territory and the infrastructure, Israel would have opted to destroy that as well. Israel has not been listening to anyone, but partially it is listening to the President-elect Donald Trump, who is going to take oath in a matter of hours as a president. I think Donald Trump has put a lot of pressure on Netanyahu to conclude this war. That is a part of the reason. The second reason is that there is now high inflation in Israel. There is also brain drain in Israel. People feel scared, though there has not been retaliatory bombing on the part of Hamas and Hezbollah in a manner that Israel had conducted. But nonetheless, there has been a sense of uncertainty in Israel, because of which there has been setback to the economy, because of which people have been leaving Israel. I think that was also another contributing factor that compelled Netanyahu to get into this ceasefire, and at his own words, dealing with his enemy, he vowed time and again that he is going to eliminate. Hamas has survived, and if it is now there is a consensus among the strategists that if Hamas survives, Israel has lost. And I'm not saying it on myself. I think you may recall the statement of U.S. Defense Secretary, and he said that Israel faces a strategic defeat. Now, by a strategic defeat, it means that if it does not eliminate Hamas, in the longer run, it would lose. Now, the survival of Hamas indicates that there will be more recruitment for the Hamas, because people are so angry and they want to take revenge from Israel. And then also, sooner or later, I think they would manage to restore their weapons supply line. Now, the bigger question is that if the international community does not act, if it does not pressurize to Netanyahu to go for a two-state solution, this cycle of violence will continue in one way or the other. But we have to keep in mind right now, Donald Trump wants to resume Abraham Accord, which means that he's listening to Netanyahu's plan, which does not include the two-state solution. That is the bigger problem. And Donald Trump and Netanyahu want all the rest of the Muslim countries to normalize ties with Israel, despite the fact that Israel has conducted an unprecedented genocide of the Muslims in Gaza. They are least bothered about it. Now, I think in days to come, in weeks to come, and maybe in months to come, there will be more pressures on countries like Saudi Arabia, on countries like Pakistan, to normalize ties with Israel. That is, again, something easier said than done.
Well, as you mentioned, it is important for the two-state solution to come in handy. So with the delay happening and the Trump administration coming in tomorrow, actually, what would you say about the next upcoming times that we are expecting for the things to unfold for Palestine?
Well, I think the scene of the Palestine remain unclear. What is going to be the fate of the Palestinians? Nobody really knows about it, because we are now in a kind of a situation where Netanyahu, right from the day one, has been pursuing a plan where the Palestinian state does not exist. And then we have a President-elect Donald Trump, and he is basically on the side of Netanyahu. But at the same time, the only good thing about Donald Trump is that essentially he's an anti-war. He looks for some kind of a deal. His previous deal of Abraham Accord, which was completely one-sided deal, where Arab countries were forced to normalize ties with Israel, and some of the northern African countries were also forced to normalize ties with the apartheid state, without going for a two-state solution. The net result was that when other countries were on the verge of normalizing ties with Israel, I'm talking about other Muslim countries, when they were about to normalize ties with Israel, at that very moment, Hamas acted. And Hamas acted in a manner which is unprecedented, killing as many as 1,000 or 1,100 Israeli, mostly soldiers, and some of them were also civilians. That changed the geostrategic landscape of the entire Middle East. The countries who wanted to normalize with Israel, they could not make it. And now the understanding in Washington probably is that now there is a change of guard in Washington, and there's a new policy, and with some kind of so-called moral authority, which I don't think is there, they are going to force once again rest of the Muslim countries to normalize ties with Israel without two-state solution. This is a bigger problem. But I think the good thing about Europe right now is that by and large there is a greater consensus in Europe, among European countries, that there has to be two-state solution. Because Israel, Netanyahu-like leaders, they have become liability on the West. Because Israel has been pursuing through its lobbies, it has been exerting pressure on the European governments, more particularly on the every US administration, through which it has been getting all kinds of the weapons, all kinds of diplomatic support, with which it has been conducting this genocidal war. Now, I think with the ceasefire, I think there will be more loud talks in the UN, in the United Nations Security Council, in the United Nations General Assembly, about going for a two-state solution. But a bigger issue is nobody knows exactly what Donald Trump is going to do. But all indications that we have seen so far is that he's going to resume Abraham Accord. And if this Abraham Accord is the same as we had witnessed during his previous government, then it is a recipe for disaster. If somebody thinks that with this ceasefire, with the killing of 50, 60,000 Palestinians in Gaza, with the injuring of such a large number of people in Gaza, they would be able to silence Palestinians, I think they are living in fool's paradise. They have proven that they have shown an unprecedented resistance and resilience, which I have not seen in any other Muslim countries whenever they fought a war with their opponents. It is altogether a different situation that a very small territory, 350 square kilometer, with a very little supply of the weapons, and they continue resisting a genocidal war for more than 1.5 years. This is unprecedented. I can't pick up any example among the Muslim countries, apart from some of the war theaters where Turkey had resisted in the World War First. So in a broader picture, I think this is the extraordinary situation. It all depends on Washington. What is going to be its policy? Is there going to be the same Abraham Accord, or the strategy has changed, the policy has changed? If it includes an independent sovereign Palestinian state, then there is a greater possibility that this cycle of violence continuing for last so many decades, that will finally come to an end. And if there is no two-state solution, if there is no sovereign Palestinian state, then what we saw on October 7, I think similar incidents will keep on happening.
Well, with the ceasefire happening now, we have seen one ceasefire about a year ago, and it was significant for a week or so. And now this one, people has higher hopes. What would you say about the hopes? Can this one be the end of the conflict that has been going on for 15 months? Or are we going to be back to fighting and attacking from the Israeli side in 1.5 months or so?
You may recall that in June last year, there was a ceasefire proposal. Donald Trump, Joe Biden was saying that the ceasefire is expected to be inked within days. 6, 7 months passed, that did not happen because Netanyahu did not listen to Joe Biden. Now, the contents of that ceasefire, by and large, are the same of the same deal that we have seen now. This particular deals, basically, the very essential part of which is that it ensures the withdrawal of the Israeli forces from the now occupied Gaza. That is extremely important because Israel wanted to continue its hold onto the Gaza and Egypt border, which Hamas did not accept then and which Hamas did not accept right now. So I think in a similar fashion, Israel also wanted to continue its occupation in the northern part of Gaza. That did not happen. Hamas did not listen to it. In fact, they had a plan to go for some kind of a settlements in the northern Gaza. So all those plans have been trashed right now. So I think, and then the bigger question that you have raised, will this ceasefire survive? This is a bigger question. I think since there is a huge distrust between the two parties, my understanding is that this ceasefire probably would survive, but not into the true spirit, but not to the true letter and spirit. Reason being is that Israel will find some kind of justification to, if not frequently, then at least unfrequently, to carry out bombing inside Gaza. Whenever they come to know, whenever they get some intelligence about the hideout of any important member of the Hamas, probably they will cite some flimsy justification about the breach of ceasefire. They could continue with the bombing. It may not happen every next day, but that kind of situation could possibly arise. This is the biggest apprehension. Unless there is a genuine intervention from the West led by the USA, I think this cycle of violence in one way or the other will continue. But at the same time, if Netanyahu goes, if he resigns under pressure from the opposition parties, if there is a change of guard in Tel Aviv, then there is a possibility that the common sense may prevail. And then they may go for some kind of a two-state solution, and there has to be beginning from somewhere. I think in that scenario, this cycle of violence probably would come to an end. But it really depends what lessons have been drawn by the Israeli leaders, what lessons have been drawn by the Mossad, what lessons have been drawn by President-elect Donald Trump, because his Abraham Accord has collapsed. And for that accord, they changed the government in Sudan. Government in Sudan was changed because Israel wanted to normalize with Sudan. And the then president was not willing to normalize under pressure from the Republic. But Sudan has become a bigger war theater. And behind that is Israel. It doesn't want any stable Muslim country. In a broader picture, I would say that Israel has gained militarily in the short term at the cost of the genocide of Palestinians. But in the long run, it would certainly lose because the public opinion in the West has changed altogether. There would be more pressures on the Western governments not to support apartheid state the way they have been supporting for last 6-7 decades. I think that policy sooner or later is going to be changed.
Well, with the situation that is the significance of the what is happening in the Middle East and the ceasefire at the moment, you're saying that the implications can happen in any time soon. Do you see that the implications of these negotiations between Israel and Hamas can be redirected because what is unfolding right now has actually really strained the trust, that trust wasn't already there? So what would you say about how it is going to continue from now on?
Well, I think in coming days and weeks, the bigger demand from Israel would be if there are no more names from Hamas, or if there are less number of the names, or if they are, the number of the names are short of the expectation of the apartheid state, I think then there will be, again, this distrust would linger on. That is going to be a bigger problem. Now, at this particular point of time, nobody exactly knows how many among 94 prisoners of war have been killed, or they have died because of other reasons, or Israel itself killed them in the bombing, intentionally or unintentionally. Nobody knows about it because these prisoners of war were segregated. They've been separated from each other, and they different group of theirs were actually parked in the tunnels. So Hamas is obviously will take a lot of time because they don't want to communicate on the modern gadgets. Now, in that context, I think whenever there is going to be the final list of these prisoners of war, when this list would be handed over to the Israel, then we have to see what reaction would be there. And then there is also the second part of it, which is that those who were killed by Hamas and their dead bodies are with them, whether they are the prisoners of war or there are the Israeli soldiers. We don't know at this particular point of time. That would be the second phase. I think the critical part obviously is going to be not the first or the second phase. Critical part is going to be the third phase, because will Israel withdraw its troops from the Gaza-Egypt border? That's a critical part, because Israel has been making lame excuses that from that particular border there have been tunnels through which Hamas has been getting the military's hardwares, military grade weapons, and also, in fact, they were also getting a lot of food from Egypt through those tunnels. Israel has tried to destroy them. I don't think they were able to destroy all of them. So I think that part of border is extremely important. We have to see, will Israel withdraw from that border in the latent spirit of the ceasefire? That is a bigger question. My understanding is that probably it would, because it will have to, because of the diplomatic pressure, because of the contents of the ceasefire. In case Israel want to retain its hold on the Egypt-Gaza border, for that to happen, they will have to conduct some kind of false flag operation, blaming Hamas of their own dirty work. I think in a bigger picture, my understanding is probably they would withdraw. Another region is northern Gaza, because on northern Gaza, Israel has been eyeing on to occupy it for a longer period of time, and even to build up the settlements. And even the son-in-law of the President-elect Donald Trump, who's a Jew by religion, I mean, he has a strong desire, basically, to set up a real estate business there, and he wanted to build up settlements there. Now, again, if Mossad has some kind of other strategy, which we know all together, that is, they want to basically continue creating bad conditions in Gaza to force Israeli population to leave Gaza. If that strategy is still there, or will it be there, then I think they would not withdraw, and they will find some kind of justification to resume the war. The likelihood of which is, I would say, is very less. My understanding is that probably Israel would withdraw. And then if it withdraws from the northern Gaza, will it also withdraw from the so-called buffer zone it established after October 7? That is again a bigger question. So Israel may opt to have its heavy deployment at the Gaza-Israel borders, and also it may continue to have its presence in the buffer zone. But again, this is Gaza, this is not Syria, where it had taken over the buffer zone of around 20 square kilometers. It is a Gaza where the resistance and resilience is unprecedented, where Israel knows that since Hamas has survived, and Hamas is going to continue to give them a very tough time, if there is, again, the point I want to make again, if there is no two-state solution.
Well, Lastly, I would like to ask you about your opinions on the situation right now, because the ceasefire has started and I've been highlighting this for a while. So as you said, there are so many things to reconsider: the infrastructure, the rebuilding, the things that Israel has to actually act on, but probably is not going to. When you consider all of these when you put all of these in a one pot, what would you say about the upcoming days that we are expecting to happen? And do you think that any negotiations are going to happen when the ceasefire still continues? And do you think that we are going to be able to see the other phases, or are we going to be stuck at the phase 1 or phase 2?
Well, phase third is essentially also part of which is also reconstruction. But again, that's a loud idea. Again, how to implement that phase and who's going to fund the reconstruction? We know, as I explained earlier on, that the Arab countries and the Muslim countries are going to fund the reconstruction. But the bigger picture is that as much as 85,000 ton explosive have been thrown onto Gaza through air strikes and through other means of war. And now that explosive material is onto these buildings, these destroyed buildings under the rubbles. We don't know that some of these explosives may explode whenever these debris are removed. But there is a very safe assessment which suggests that in order to remove these debris from Gaza, because 70 to 80% Gaza has been destroyed, it was already thickly populated, there could be possibly 5 to 10 years time when it will be completely, it could be restored to its original form, because Israel has destroyed its sewage system, Israel has destroyed its cleaning water system, it has destroyed every means which can hold on to the life of Palestinians. Basically, it has left no stone unturned to destroy Gaza, to conduct genocide in a manner that no one survives there. Nonetheless, people have survived. Now, bigger question is where they are going to live. They are being frozen to death. Even if there is a even if Israel honors ceasefire and there is no more clashes between Hamas and Israel, then the bigger question is that these people are being frozen to death. They don't have shelters. They are living in a makeshift arrangements. And I hope with the enforcement of ceasefire, the help is obviously going to come externally. But again, they need a proper shelter. So there are huge challenges ahead. And I think it will, within the next couple of months, the scene would be clear. And if this ceasefire is genuinely enforced, my understanding is that the journalists, researchers, academians, they will all visit Gaza, and they will come to know a kind of the destruction which has not been reported so far. I think the real scale, the real industrial scale of the destruction of the genocide, we still do not know about it, because there have been continuing military campaign against the people in the occupied Gaza. I think my understanding is that probably there could be surge of tens of thousands of the casualties when these rebels, these debris are removed.
Well, Javed, thank you so much for the explanation, and thank you so much for joining us here on A News.
The growing tide of anti-Israel sentiments. What you see behind me is just tip of the iceberg of what is happening in the country. More than half of $52 billion black CIA budget is spent on espionage network in Pakistan. How would you handle it?
The US has looked upon Pakistan as an ally at one point and then as an enemy at the same time.
That is going to be the first legal reason on the basis of which he is going to be instantly ousted by the Supreme Court of Pakistan.
Joining us live, Javed Rana, who's an expert on politics and geostrategic issues.
In the world politics, which is not being driven by any moral principle, it is being driven by the hard geostrategic realities. In a broader picture, more countries would aspire to have nuclear weapons.